Good morning. I just want to speak a moment about who has to fast on Tisha B'Av, and the answer is everybody who's bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah has to fast on Tisha B'Av. The Shulchan Aruch says, "Ubarais umenikos," that pregnant women and nursing women misanois b'Tisha B'Av kedarach shemisanois umashlimos b'Yom Kippur. That if you're pregnant women, nursing women have to fast, same as Yom Kippur. It's not the same as Asar B'Tevis or Shivasar B'Tammuz. Those are were makel for pregnant women. Even Tisha B'Av, that's a nitcha, which is not this year, we're makel, but this year's a regular Tisha B'Av. Pregnant women, nursing women have to fast. Unless, says the Shulchan Aruch, she's in the first 30 days. If she's the first 30 days that the baby's born, meaning if the baby was born on Ches Tammuz and on, so then she does not have to fast. But that's not because she has a new baby, that's because she's a chola. That's because for the next halacha, that a chola does not have to fast. And we're assuming that a woman right after birth is a chola. It's not because of she's a menekes, it's just because she's a chola, considered a chola for those 30 days, and that's different than Yom Kippur in that sense. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Chaya kol shloishim yom, that once somebody gives birth, all first 30 days, v'chein chola, and the same thing as a chola, shu tzarech lechol, chola which needs to eat, ein tzrichin oimed, elo machil noisem miyad. You don't have to have an omed, you have to say, okay, this much you do have to eat, that much you don't have to eat. Maybe shiurim, you don't do that. If you're a chola, you don't eat. Of course, the question with this, the makam chayli like gozer rabbanim, because by a choli, the rabbanim never were gozer this tinus to begin with. Of course, we all want to know who's a chola, what's called a chola. So it's not like somebody with a headache, because that's only that Torah says only by the minor fast. So we're talking about a chola means somebody who's sick. And the definition that I see in the Poskim is that fasting will make you sicker. So the idea is not that you don't feel good on Tisha B'Av. Nobody feels good on Tisha B'Av. But al pirov, most people are thirsty and hungry and have a headache. That's what we're doing. That's the avoda, to not feel good on Tisha B'Av. You can try to do certain things to make it easier, but basically you don't feel good on Tisha B'Av. That's the avelos of Tisha B'Av. But if a person is a chole, I know that my Rabbi said if you're taking antibiotics or if you have strep throat, some kind of an infection that's known, a proper chole, so then you don't have to fast. Makam chole gozer rabbanan. Question is this: when you don't have to fast, I see a lot of poskim say that if one has active diabetes, they shouldn't fast. As an example, that's not a chola. I mean, it's not an active chola, but if you have active uncontrolled diabetes and your numbers are flying all over the place, so the poskim say that you shouldn't fast. So that's called a chola. Machala, you have a chola. Let's say you don't fast because you're a chola. So what does that mean? That you're allowed to eat straight through? You're allowed to eat regular? You just ignore the fact that it's a fast? So certainly you're not allowed to eat basar v'yayin. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. You can't, because it's the 9 days. It's still the 9 days. But how much are you allowed to eat? So this is a machlokas in the poskim, interesting in the recent poskim that I know. Not in the early Rishonim, like Avnei Nezer, Reb Chaim Brisker. They said that there's no tinus. Once you're a chola, there's no tinus, which it really says in Shulchan Aruch, like Gazur Rabbanon, there's no Gzeres tinus, and once there's no tinus, there's no tinus. The Mishnah Berurah says before it's not like that. He says, Mishnah Berurah in the Bir Halacha in Tav Kuf Nun Daled, b'makam choyle, Malcolm She'ena Machla Shel Chalaria, he's talking about when there was a cholera epidemic. So if there isn't a strong cholera epidemic or pandemic, as we know too well about pandemics, Chas v'shalom yoichol pachos mikaseves. The Mishnah Berurah says you should eat pachos mikashir. Who heard of pachos mikashir on Tisha B'Av? Pachos mikashir, what's the shir? That's pachos mikashir. So on Yom Kippur, there's a kazayis, there's a koseves, which is a little more than a kazayis, a tamar. But there's a shir, so you don't want to be chayv kares, so you eat pachos mikashir. On Tisha B'Av, what's pachos mikashir? But the Mishnah Berurah says where you're not like terribly sick or there's not a terrible pandemic, going on, so then you should eat pachos mikashir. What's the reason? Not so you shouldn't be chayiv on the law of eating, because this way technically you're not breaking your fast. You could say anenu, you're not breaking your fast. It's for even though, by the way, even those that don't fast on all the Tanaisim, I think it's a good thing. Maybe the Mishnah even says this, to eat pachas mikashir until mincha, because that way you can say anenu. You haven't actually broken the fast if you're able. Depends on obviously how sick you are, but if you're able to eat pachas mikashir, what's pachas mikashir on Shivas or B'Tammuz? Just that you didn't break the fast, and if you didn't break the fast, you can anenu avinu malkeinu. You're more part of the club to be able to say those kind of things. So here you have whether there's such a thing as shiurim on Tisha B'Av, or there isn't shiurim on Tisha B'Av, is a machlokes. Let's call it the Mishnah Berurah and Reb Chaim Brisker, or Mishnah Berurah and the Avnei Nezer. That's a machlokes, and I don't know, we usually go with the Mishnah Berurah here. Interesting how far this goes. That there's a question like this year of making Havdalah. Right, making Havdalah this Saturday night, which is already Tisha B'Av, if you're not going to fast. So how do you make Havdalah? Do you make Havdalah on wine, on beer, on nothing, or you don't make Havdalah? What do you do? So I'll discuss that at a different time. But it's interesting that Rav Chaim Kanievsky Shalom said that you shouldn't make Havdalah on any beverage because it's extra. You don't have to drink it. You should only eat, like the Mishnah Berurah seems to say, you should only eat or drink what you have to eat or drink, and that's a mitzvah. You're doing that because it's halacha, but the halacha says you should drink as little as possible, so he says you should make Havdalah on a beverage. And Rabbi Yoshev, Alav Shalom, who's his father-in-law, said, no. We see clear in the Avnei Nezer, we see clear in Reb Chaim that there's no tanis. And if there's no tanis, if there's no tzayim for a chayla, so then of course you have to make Havdalah. So that's just yeshiva charade. but the halacha l'maisa is, I think, that it would seem to me just logically that makes sense to, if you have to eat on Tisha B'Av, to eat as little as you can. And the reason it makes sense to me, just in my Balabata Shemayin, is because it's Tisha B'Av. There's a din of Avelos. It's not a din and fast. It's a din of feeling that tsar, and like the Poskim say, Rachmana liba boy. There was a Churban, there's a Churban Yerushalayim, there's a Galus, there's Yisurim, there's anti-Semitism. So you fast the best you can.